In this video, we're going to go over some guidelines that you can use when you're verifying these trig identities. Okay, they can get kind of confusing, but if you kind of stick to these four key tips, then it won't be as overwhelming. So first, simplify the more complex side of the identity, but know that you may have to simplify both. So try to stick with just doing one, the more complex side, but you may have to go with both. Just keep that in the back of your head. Second tip that you would that I have for you is to rewrite your different functions in terms of the same function, usually in terms of sine and cosine. The reason why is because if you think about it, there are six different trig functions: sine, cosine, tangent, cotangent, secant, and cosecant. But tangent, cotangent, secant, and cosecant can all be rewritten in terms of sine and cosine. So it may not always be the best or like simplest way to do it. Sometimes it might be easier to keep it in terms of like, tangent and cotangent, secant and cosecant. But when all else fails, you can always rewrite it in terms of sine and cosine and then kind of do the algebra to get to see how the identity works. The next tip for you is when you're adding and subtracting terms with fractions, you have to find the least common denominator. Okay, that'll really kind of simplify the work. It may take you a little bit in terms of combining like terms, foiling stuff, but when you can find an LCD and simplify the fractions, it'll really help expedite the identity. And then simplify complex fractions. Okay, what will usually happen is that factors will cancel out. Okay, so look for factors that you can cancel out within a complex fraction. And then there's one last additional note. This last additional note here is that we cannot treat identities like equations. Okay, so there are two different things. Okay, so therefore we cannot add, subtract, multiply, or divide both sides by the same thing. Okay, so it won't work with an identity. Sorry, I was just fixing the formatting here. So again, it's not an equation. Can't move terms over from one side to the other, and we'll see that in a few examples. There are some tips that I'll give you to help you with making sure that you don't move terms over.